I'm Betni. I am a muralist, artist, designer. I'm also a professor of design at Creighton University. And I live in Omaha with my partner and our 2 kids. I was born in Canada, and then my family moved to Papua New Guinea for about 10 years before returning to the US. And I've lived in the US most of my life since then, except for some traveling and little bits of living other places. And I was definitely influenced by my time in New Guinea because it was my formative years. So, you know, I remember seeing really large public art, and all those have stuck with me and probably influenced me more than I realized. Most of my art is either informed by nature or really representing nature. I'll do things like landscapes, florals, all the way to multi-layered abstractions where it's a bit hard to tell what the subject matter is, and in the end it's about the overall feeling. Nature is where I think most people go when they need to seek some calm, and so I love to go on hikes. I seek residencies that allow me to be in those places, such as national forests and state parks, and it's a really important part of my art practice. I collect things when I'm hiking, I sketch things, I photograph a lot. Sometimes the photography becomes its own art, but oftentimes they're references for later. And I do a lot of painting, but I also will do some of my abstractions as laser cut artwork, and they just usually come from sketches that I've done. Most of the time, my art is about nature, except when I'm doing murals. Typically that's going to be about what the client wants. And when I do community murals, it's even more complicated because you have a big set of clients. And every once in a while I get to include some natural elements. My first experience with community murals was accidental. I was doing murals in Minneapolis at the time with a grant, and so I needed help painting, so I would call on my friends to come help me paint some days. And I really enjoyed the process of being around other people while I painted, because sometimes as artists you just don't get that. And just watching people have fun and talk and, you know, drink coffee while painting left a mark on me for sure. And then the stronger aspect of community murals happened when kids would come up from the neighborhood while I was painting and ask if they could help. And I didn't know how to say no to kids, so I would say sure. You know, I figured I could go back and fix things if I needed. And I usually had to do a little bit of editing, but most of the time I left what the kids did. I was doing abstractions at the time, and what I remember most is a sense of pride. And they just loved being able to do it. And I remember some kids brought their family over to see what they had been working on. And that in particular really left that's more of an indelible mark. I can't shake that feeling of watching such joy on the kids' faces. And so many years later, I was finally asked to do a community mural. And I'm so glad that I was given the opportunity, even though I hadn't had previous experience in it, because what I learned through that process just made me an advocate for community murals, because they're so impactful in many people's lives that I hope that that's a part of many more people's lives, especially kids. They take that with them forever. And so I can't always participate in community murals based on my day job and the fact that I have 2 kids, young kids at home. And so I decided that a way that I could help was beyond consulting. I was doing some consulting for folks that would come and say, hey, what do we do? How do we think about this project? How could this work? And I was happy to just go and talk to them and kind of work them through possible procedures. And I was actually implementing a lot of designs for nonprofits within my classes. I teach design, so we were actually doing designs for clients. We weren't doing the painting. I would help transfer the designs onto the walls so that community participants could do the painting. And that's great. I also was working with high school students as a mentor, and what I learned is that The design process is probably the most important part of all, in all honesty. After you know what the subject matter is and the color choices are, if there are any, then you can just really delve in, and it's the hardest part, in my opinion, is really combining everybody's voices and desires into a design that makes sense and is interesting to look at, but also can tell a story if that's what it's meant to, or give a message if that's what it's meant to, or tell people about the history of the place. What I love most about community murals is the fact that they bring people together for a period of time, and during that time it strengthens the community, it makes people know each other better, they become better friends, and you just get to do something different, something out of the ordinary for a bit of time, where they get to think about art and design and style and color, and hopefully bring some more joy to not only the process part, but also just the end result of being able to see it every day when they're in their community. So the process of a community mural is complicated. It's challenging. It's rewarding. There are some components that really affect the final outcome, and I think one of the first decisions that a community needs to decide is the type of participation that they want. And that includes the meetings, of course, the subject matter meetings, the design meetings, the artist choosing meetings, the subject, it's all intertwined. But in the end, there are some constants. And first of all, we all need a wall, right? Now that wall could be interior or exterior. If it's exterior, it could be publicly owned, which then of course you gotta work with the city or town. If it's privately owned but still facing the public, it'll probably need approval to go through the city. And sometimes that's through a Public Arts Commission. Funding, you need funding. Because in the end you have to pay people properly. You have to compensate artists and their team. They might have a team. Or you can hire assistants for the artists, just so that more people get to be part of that process so they can learn. You might have to hire researchers if it's a historical piece and you want it accurate. That's not easy to do. And oftentimes Google is not going to be enough. You're going to have to go visit some historical societies, maybe some museum archives, to really get it right. You might hire a photographer to do photography of buildings or portraits. And so you kind of need to think about all those possibilities. In addition to, of course, your supplies, the paint, the design fees for the artist, the painting fees for the artist. Some of the items can be gotten at a discount. Occasionally, some people will donate. But I find that a lot of paint companies, if you go in directly to them, and that would be, a place that really only deals in paint, if you talk to the manager, they'll often give you a deep discount. Other times, places like scaffolding and lifts, rental places will sometimes also give you a discount. Occasionally, they'll let you, rent it for free for a little while. I've had that happen. But anyway, you need a budget, and you might have to do some fundraising. You can do that, through multiple different ways, but the other way is to really look for grants in your community. A lot of neighborhood associations can get them. Sometimes nonprofits can get them. Certainly schools can sometimes get them. So that part does take some time, though. So you might not be able to jump directly into mural painting. You might have to wait a while, sometimes a long while. And then subject matter. What's it going to be about? So, you've probably ended up thinking about a lot of these things simultaneously. That's pretty normal. But the subject matter really needs to be figured out, because that usually will affect the style that you choose, and then the style that you choose affects which artist you choose. It's possible that you have an artist already in mind, and that's great, but you need to make sure that they're the right fit for the job. You don't want somebody that isn't too happy about what they're going to paint. And then after you know what kind of artist, like what kind of thing they need to be able to paint, and to find them, if you don't know that person, you can go through, hopefully you have some sort of art center in your community. They would be a good place to check because they can get the word out if you're doing an artist call. Usually I would recommend a call for qualifications, not design. After you look at the artist's work and you decide, yeah, these folks are a good fit, you know, you choose a few, you pay them each for design, they all come to meetings, or you just choose one artist based on people that you found. Once the design starts to happen, you have to have meetings for those, of course, multiple sometimes. Make sure they understand colors. If there are things you want to match in your city or town, or there are colors you just don't want, then they need to know that. And after everything, what I would recommend is that provide places where people can participate online in addition to in person. Not everybody is going to be able to attend every meeting. And so if you provide places where people can submit things like, you know, ideas for the subject matter to start with, and once you get past that part, if they can submit you know, memories that could contribute, or images, references, you know, links they find, some cool looking murals that they really like, you know, anything where people can start to submit. You know, somebody will have to monitor those and make sure people can really participate. And then when the designs are done, then they can also vote on some design changes. Like there could be some things that are different in a couple different design choices. And also subject to that kind of thing would be colors. People can decide on some color choices that are provided. I think that just gives more people the opportunity to participate, and that's always good. All right, so then now you've got your design chosen. Then comes the design transfer. Now that can be a party too. You can actually make it a community design transfer day, you know, if you can do it by projector. If you have to do it other ways, there might be a way to do it with the community too, but the projector way is the easiest. Schedule it at night, of course, and make it a fun event. Kids can also participate in this part. They just really, essentially you're creating a giant coloring book. So as much help as you can get in that is really good. Then when it's time to paint, you can schedule some community paint days if you've decided that the community is able to paint that particular part. Or you can have it partly painted by the artist and partly painted by the community. There's multiple ways to think about that, but that should have been decided in your in your design process. And then finally, after everything's been painted and it looks great, then it's time to celebrate, and you can schedule a community celebration day. And for all of these kinds of things, when you have events, I really would strongly recommend that you make it as obvious as possible that something fun's happening. Balloons, banners, flags, music, tents, chairs, things like that. You know, nothing fancy. People can just put up their little shade tents, really, just to make it an event where everybody feels welcome to participate. For me, as an artist, the community murals are the most challenging because I'm an introvert. And so, you know, having to really be present and listen carefully to everyone's differing opinions about what's needed in the mural is challenging. But it's a good challenge. Like, I really love the process of you know, really diving in and thinking through what everybody wants, and then coming up with designs and design solutions that people are happy with. And, you know, those take multiple meetings typically, but for me, they strengthen me as a designer mostly. Painting is super fun, but the design process is probably the part that, for me, is always the most rewarding as an artist. And then just watching people paint, honestly, is the most fun part of it all, because you get to see kids at play and at work. You know, that's how they do things, right? So, you know, watching parents and kids paint together, just, you know, pulling people from off the street, honestly, as they're walking by to come participate in a community mural day is really a beautiful thing. The end result looks different from every time because, you know, yes, I'm the artist and designer, but I'm listening so carefully to what people say that it doesn't always look the same. You know, each mural that I participate in doesn't really look like something I would necessarily do because it's not about me, it's about the community.